Well, it's a beautiful Sunday, the 29th of June in the year 2025. Thank you so much for making time to join us for this week's edition of COSTA. I'm your host. My name is Andrew Mwansa, sitting in for COSTA Mwansa. Now, the Constitutional Court has ordered government to comply with the spirit of the Constitution by ensuring that any constitutional amendment process is people-driven and led by an independent body of experts. Following wide consultations with the public, the court warned that bypassing public involvement, especially ahead of the 2026 general elections, risked confusion and undermine constitutional integrity. Now, this followed a petition by former Lumezi Member of Parliament, Munia Zulu, and Tonse Alliance National Youth Chairperson Celestine Mukandila, who challenged the legality of the constitutional amendment process. In a majority judgment by Constitutional Court President Professor Margaret Mnalula, Judges Martin Musaluke, Matthew Chisunka, and Judy Mulongoti, the court ruled that the government's current approach lacked legitimacy. The court found that there was no evidence of structured engagement with the public in the initial stages of the amendment process. Now, the judges held that even amendments deemed non-contentious could fundamentally alter the Constitution and should therefore be subjected to broad consultations. Now, this ruling by the Constitutional Court comes just a day after the President directed Minister of Justice Princess Kasune to halt the ongoing legislative process for Bill number 7 of 2025, citing the need for broader national consultation. We discussed the future of legal reforms under the new Dawn administration, but also their commitment to a people-driven process. My guest is Minister responsible for Justice, Honorable Princess Kasune. Thank you so much, Honorable Minister, for making time to be a part of tonight's edition of COSTA.
Well, thank you for having me again on this show.
Well, it's good to have you again on this show because at the time that we're having this discussion was at the height when you were going around the country to begin to sensitize people and begin to raise awareness of the content of this bill. Before we can proceed to the latest developments that we've seen the past few days, let's begin off with what people were telling you when you moved across the country regarding the content of this bill.
Yeah, so I think actually when I came on this show, it was actually prior to even us going out, if I remember correctly. And we started hearing people saying there is need for more consultation. And because we already had a budget in terms of constitutional reforms and some of just our law reforms within Ministry of Justice, we took advantage of that budget line and just said, you know what, maybe let's find out what is really happening on the ground. And that is how we embarked on that. Actually, it was born out of a group of pastors who came together in Kitwe, and they just wanted to know what the provisions were all about at that time. And so we took the time there with my permanent secretary, and it was from there we realized, you know what, this was a good thing that they invited us to be their guests there, but how about us now taking that responsibility and go around and really see where people are. So that is how it was born. And then from there we started with Central Province, and you could tell that people were very interested, but also you could tell that a lot of people were still asking in terms of very basic questions. And I think we took it to say, let's not just end in Central Province, let's take it to the whole, to all the 10 provinces. And clearly it came out that there was a lot of people who were very much interested and supportive, but the information in itself was something that they needed to digest more. Some of them were saying, now as we have learned, but what about the people beyond where we are? So really, and all this feedback was being fed back to the executive as well. And so in as much as there was the president's decision on the 26th to say, you know what, let's have more consultation, he had already started hearing people who were supportive, but yet their basic questions really did tell you that there was need for more consultation. So him being the listening president that he is, when he met then with the different civil society and other key stakeholders. I think it was on the 24th, if I'm not mistaken. And we were just finishing up with the Copper Belt. He then gave guidance to the Ministry of Justice, which we're very glad about, because one thing you don't want is to go with the Constitution that, though, as the Constitutional Court has said, though you may not see it contagious, but again, one man's food is one man's poison, as they say. So I think it is important that we as Zambians, in the spirit of not only democracy, but in the spirit of oneness, and as we amend the highest supreme law, we interrogate the details of the articles themselves.
Correct me if I'm wrong. When you say that you moved across the country to get feedback from the people, did you say that people were giving you positive feedback in regards to this bill?
Oh, yeah, there was a lot of positive feedback, especially from the chiefs. I remember the Paramount Chief Mpezeni. I think first of all, he started by saying, we wish we had more time to conversate around this issue. But he went on to say, if there is an article that I am saying it's long overdue for Zambia, it is a proportional representation. And he was very much excited about explaining why that is critical. He went on to talk about the animal kingdom, the lion kingdom, pardon me. He talked about in the village how women come back from the field together with the men and still they are continuing to work. So he really said this is so progressive and long overdue. The other clause I think he talked about was the youths, and he was very categorical in saying that the youths needs to be part of the conversation. So it wasn't just him. We went to Northern Province, it was the same. And of course in Luapula you had a little bit of a mixture. There was one chief, I think is it Chief Mabumba, who really clearly you could tell that he was saying, hold on, where are we going? But the other chiefs who were there in that meeting did endorse the process. You had unions, as you saw, who went on to endorse the process. We had student bodies. Actually, in Kitwe itself, it was overwhelmingly because while we were presenting and trying to explain some of the issues together with the Commission of Laws, and they just said, you need to stop. We already understand this, because I think they had had a lot of conversations, which was very different from the beginning, where people had questions because even the text of the bill had not yet been published.
It's so interesting, Honourable Minister, because I think from the first time you proposed this bill in the House, in March, until the time that you gave your first reading in this month in June, there's been wide rejection, especially from civil society organizations, the church, the Law Association of Zambia, and just so many people, were against, this particular bill, and had requested that you withdraw it, with immediate effect. Were you listening to some of these voices also, as you were giving feedback to the President regards to your findings on the ground?
Absolutely, but I will have to say that a lot of the concern, if I may call it that way, to put it mildly, was very much concentrated in Lusaka province, in particular in the Lusaka city itself. It was very different, even when in Eastern Province, for example, when they said, wait a minute, I think we need to interrogate it more. It was not out of a confrontational way, but it was more from a dialogue point of view. But I guess being in a capital city, you expect that more a little bit aggressive, but we were listening, and I wish you could listen to some of our presentation. Whenever they said that there were concerns around the issues, even the chiefs from Southern Province, they said, you know what, we have heard you, we can't even make a decision on this matter. We want to make sure that the people have been actually consulted broadly. And we left them at that, And so you could tell that people were asking, here's the difference. There were those who were asking out of genuineness, and they were saying, we need more consultation. We need to hear more. We need to be explained to. Then there were those who started disagreeing even before there was even the text, the provisions themselves. Then secondly, after the provision was done, then there was accusation that no, they will be increasing 50+1 for the president. I think you remember that conversation. Again, I heard it more in Lusaka, of course, 50+1, because when we went in other provinces, it was like you were telling them something they didn't even know about. They said, yeah, because these are some of the allegations that the 50+1 clause will be taken out, the running mate will be taken out, and also the president's tenure will be increased, either by making sure he runs for 7 years instead of 5, or he has 3 terms, things like that. They were very baffled. But these are conversations you found in some of the interviews I had in Lusaka. Secondly, also, there was just people who were saying, we don't want to see the bill. So that's totally different.
And they gave reasons for that. I think most of the reasons came from the fact that there was no wider consultation regarding this bill, but also other concerns were that you can't change the constitution when we're nearing an election. This is so wrong. That's what the concerns by many, civil society organizations were.
When was the constitution in 2016 amended? And when did the election take place? We do read the Constitution has amended in 2016, correct? And the elections were when? 2016. So some of the arguments, I think maybe we lose the history around. But as I learned
if
more...
the process was wrong,
do
you have to...
No, it wasn't wrong. I don't think it was wrong. But I think what is important, especially when you look at President Akainde's last words in his guidance to Minister of Justice, is let's also look at the content. Let's give the content a benefit of the doubt. I think that is the spirit we want, because when you look at the amendment that happened in 2016, it was an election year. And also, a constitution is for the people. So if you find that there is need to clear or to cure some of the gaps that exist, it is up to the Zambian people.
But also in 2016, Honorable Minister,
Yes.
there was some form of consensus that was built, by the members of Parliament and generally by the people.
And that is what we have said, and that's what the President has guided, okay? But also, let's remember that there is also the pronunciation from the pronouncement from the Constitutional Court. But also you have to remember Article 79 in its all. It does not speak about the consultation we're talking about. But precedence is important. And people's voices in a democratic dispensation is very important. And also when you're looking at the law of the land, the supreme law. So I think these are the issues that we need even to ask ourselves. Are these things that we even want to add to the Constitution? Because by just you reading Article 79, I'm sure you have read it because it became so easy for all of us to even recite. It just talks about members of Parliament, they can amend, the Constitution. It's clear, almost in black and white. Secondly, it says, but there shall be need to gazette the text for 30 days, which happened. And by the way, part of the 30 days was for what purpose? It was to get views and feelings of the Zambian people. So it wasn't just the travels we took, it was also what people gave feedback. And that is what the 30 days is all about. And the last safeguard is that then it's not a simple majority vote, as a lot of people who were speculating. It has to be 2/3 majority of the people to vote. What does that look like in our current National Assembly? We have 156 members. It means you need about 111. So there are these safeguards. Before that, there's even a committee, and members from the public, they have to come and become witnesses. And that committee is also at least diverse in its nature, and their report is so critical, and it comes back on the floor of the House and it is debated. And then there is a time when you can also move amendments. The government itself, given that this was a bill from the government, but also the members of Parliament. So in as much as we have heeded, first of all, to the guidance by the President, first and foremost, and then, of course, follow up as respecting the separation of power, it is important also to underscore that there were a lot of measures, or there are measures, I should say, because it's not passed, that Parliament has in itself as well to ensure that it's not that easy.
Coming to the judgment of the Constitutional Court and the President's guidance for us to defer this bill for wider consultation, the guidance from the President raises a lot of concerns and suspicion that just a day after he has guided you to defer the bill, the Constitutional Court renders a judgment to the effect that this, process lacks legitimacy. What are the chances, in fact, these concerns you've heard from civil society organizations and prominent people in this country, that perhaps the President could have had sight of, of the Constitutional Court judgment so that he saves an embarrassment? Because if the Constitutional Court had guided that this process must halt, that could have caused an embarrassment on your government, Honourable Minister. What are you saying to people that are saying that
insinuating
the only reason why the President deferred this bill was because he had sight of the judgment, or perhaps he was hinted that this is coming our way?
I don't want to say he didn't know or he knew, but one thing I know that we didn't know. And if we didn't know, I want to believe that the President wasn't privy to this. Now, look at the trajectory. This was part of the roadmap. What was the roadmap? That after the 30 days has expired, okay, we were going to introduce the bill, which happened exactly how we had said it. Now, it wasn't exactly the next day, but it was within that time frame, okay? And so we introduced the bill. Now, because, again, like I have stated, the President was very much involved through the executive, not him as an individual per se, but when we bring some of the feedback, we bring it to the executive in the cabinet, and people are able also to speak, and also they're able to say, these are the pros, these are the cons. And so when we had been conversating, and he brought us to speed, like I said, we were in Kitwe, and he had this very important meeting with the civil society, plus what he had already been receiving from us and others, he thought it was a wise thing that we posed, which is deferred. Again, deferred is not withdrawn, because again, there are a lot of people out there who are just bended on seeing something out of this UPND New Dawn government not go through. So after that, we saw a lot of people actually say, this is how leadership is supposed to be. This is how a listening president is supposed to be. And it speaks to his character. He's a man, I think, I may be biased, but he's a listening president. I don't think so. I have to believe that he didn't even know. But because he had been following, and I personally, I had a habit of saying, Mr. President, there were these praises of COSTA, people who asked, especially the Royal Highnesses. I took very much interest in the Royal Highnesses. And what a great opportunity for this government to have heard from them, Western Province, all the provinces, and really to say, let's hear more, let's conversate more. I think for me, it is nothing but purely leadership that is willing to listen to the people.
Don't you think you'd have saved yourself this embarrassment, Honourable Minister, if this process, if this process was people-driven as opposed to a government-driven process?
How is it government-driven?
You're the one who presented this bill before Parliament. The proposals before Parliament were initiated by government and not the people.
So there are, is it 3 or 4 ways that a bill can be brought? Again, this is something that we need to continue learning. A bill can be brought by an individual, which is a backbencher in the House. A bill can be brought by a private citizen of the Republic of Zambia. And a bill can be brought by the government. So there is no right or wrong in how you bring the bill. Now, we have been on record saying that some of the conversation or some of the wisdom that found themselves in formulating the articles that we were looking at was because of the different commissioner reviews that have happened. And you would agree with me. And so many commissioner reviews have happened in this country. And so you have a president who's very pragmatic, who's action-oriented. There you can default him. Okay, because he has seen some of these review commissions. Then, before we forget, there was the Electoral Reforms Technical Committee that was actually commissioned last year. They had their own findings, they had a report, and a lot of civil society were a part of that. Now, was everything that was in the Electoral Reforms Technical Committee captured in the articles that were published in the Gazette? No. But this is where the President kept saying, these are non-contentious. But again, let's be mindful and respectful to one another that what may be non-contentious to me is not non-contentious to someone else. So there was no embarrassment. And really, the process of the bills can be brought by those that I've mentioned. So the government or a private member from the public or a member of parliament in the House can bring a bill.
Let me ask you this personal question, Honourable Minister. Why does the President feel that this country hates him? Because I remember vividly when he was meeting the civil society organizations, he says that there's so much hate by the people to him because he's trying to amend the Constitution. He gave an example of how the Constitution was amended in an election year in UNIP time, in an election year in the MMD, and in an election year, in the Patriotic Front.
And that's true, right?
Well, and that's true.
Yeah.
But he feels that there's a sense in which people hate him. Why does he think like that?
Well, that is a question for him. But what I want to say is that with all the events that we have seen in our country, I think we have to accept that healing needs to happen in our country. And today, I mean, you were trying to reach me. I just told myself, I'm going to be in the house of the Lord today. Better to be in the house of the Lord than 1,000 days elsewhere, as David said in the Bible. So you will find that what we are going through as a country
and perhaps let me
clearly speak to not forgiving and hate. I can't speak for him as an individual, but as a country.
Perhaps for you, from your own findings and from your own reasoning and wisdom, why do you think people have rejected this bill? If you think that the right process was followed and everything right was done, and there's no ill intention from the side of U.S. government, why do you think people highly rejected this Bill 7?
I wouldn't say highly rejected. Like I've said, the perception in Lusaka is totally different from the provinces where we went. You could clearly hear innocence, that I can tell you, where people were saying, I'm hearing this for the first time, for example. Or can you explain more? Oh, we were misled. People told us that now you're going to have a blank check for nomination. You remember that conversation. It became so hot until an explanation had to be made. Look, currently, you have 8 members who are nominated. If you use a percentage of what 8 looks like, that's 5%. So the increment of 2, if the number of 55 constituencies is added, that is only adding 2. Some have at least the courage to say, oh, I hear you. But there are those who continued. I mean, even after the explanation, however you explained it, there were people who were still bended on just saying what they want to say. So it is a mixture of people. And so for me, if, like we were saying in some of the interactions, is that we hear you. I think that is a strength. When you say, I hear you, and from a place of power, such as the executive, to say, we hear you, and can we go back and dialogue, especially around the substance of the articles that have been provided for. Is there common ground? Is there a better way to do the proportional representation? I have shared one of the groups that was so appreciative to say, never in history have we ever had the executive put it in pen and paper, because at the end of the day, the executive have to put it in pen and paper, that we ever saw numbers of people with disabilities being honored. Okay? So they start from there, but then they go on to say, and this was also highlighted in Mchinga province. There was a federation of people living with disability, away from the ones we know here in Lusaka, mostly the Zapid. They said, but we would ask that there will be a consideration so that maybe out of the number of women, which is 20, which was being proposed, that we would have another number. Can you imagine a woman and has a disability? That is a double situation. What about among the youths, where there was a number of 12? Can we also have a number of people with disability, plus the 3? So you can tell that they were coming from a place of appreciation that this has never been done before. Now, whenever something is new, Andrew, we have to accept. It is difficult for anyone to just say, okay, let's go. You have to explain, and maybe this is where we are saying, let's take a sit back and explain to each other.
Would it be right to say that the positive feedback that you got from these other provinces, besides Lusaka, was the fact that you're riding on the ignorance of these chiefs, the ignorance of these people that you found in other provinces? Because according to you, Minister, you're saying some of them genuinely didn't even know that this was what's happening, and then you began to explain to them. So don't you think that the positive feedback you were giving to the president was based off these ignorant people that you are consulting, and you're trying to get feedback from? That's the reason for why you got positive feedback. But yet in Lusaka here, where you found the elite, the people that understand these constitutional matters, your bill, Honourable Minister, was highly rejected.
I don't think think so. And I would hate to call anyone ignorant. So I didn't call them that. So let's just be
ignorant on this process.
Let's just be clear, because tomorrow I don't want to say Honorable Kasune called other people ignorant. I said there was some not understanding in the beginning. Now, and then it was in Lusaka also, where you had a lot of people who were saying no to the bill before it was even published. So again, that should give you yourself a culture of a city. Every city has its own culture. Now, remember I talked about Copperbelt, where they had seen the gazetted bill, which wasn't there in Central Province, for example. We had just the provisions. And they were the ones, while we were still interacting, said, wait a minute, we have been hearing, we have gone and downloaded, and by that time even the articles had already been downloaded in local languages. They said, we understand, and this is long overdue. So I would say that it is a mixture. Even the people in Lusaka, I don't think it's everyone who said no, but I want to appreciate those that endorsed the process and those who said, wait a minute, from a genuine point of view. I am not here to talk to those who are just bended on nothing will come out of UPND is good, or this constitution amendment is bad, even before they interrogate, before it was even published. I think there you can say, maybe we're just not pulling together. But when people are objectively saying, how do we look at the delimitation, for example? Are you gerrymandering, or is it genuinely so? Then we explain. Then they ask questions. Where would it be? Will it be equally distributed? What are the reasons? What will be the guiding principles for delimitating a constituency? Then you take them to Article 58 and 59, things like that. I think there is a genuine conversation. I think for me, in my own personal capacity as an individual, and of course being in the office of Minister of Justice, really, I want us to get back to that spirit of one Zambia, one nation, which I believe that somehow we are losing it. Now, this is my observation over the things that are happening, over some of the things we are saying to each other, over some of the actions we are doing to each other. There is need to heal, and then there's need to love and forgive one another genuinely on both sides, okay, and then move together in oneness, especially as it relates to the Constitution Amendment.
Well, if I got you right, Honorable Minister, are you saying that these voices that the civil society organizations are raising, the Law Association of Zambia, the church, actually, the church mother bodies are raising, they're raising them out of the hate that they have for the UPND, as opposed to the genuine position on what they feel is right?
So you have asked the question of hate twice, okay, maybe even 3 times. You have asked it to say President Hakainde Hichilema feel that people just hate him naturally. Then now you have asked it to me to say, are the questions or those that pushed back the 30 civil societies and the mother bodies that were there, the church, are coming from a hate place? No. The answer is a big no.
Then why do we need to hear? You're saying that we need to hear because
I'm
there's
saying
so much hate.
As a country, I think we have to accept that somehow down the line, we have lost the objectivity because of just the way we are talking to each other. You go on social media today, you will find that there's a lot of just lashing each other. You go in our own circles, the way we are looking at each other. I want to get back to that place where I can disagree with you, but I'm disagreeing with you from an objective point of view. That is where I am coming from. And that is where I'm saying, as Zambians, we need to band together. There is no secret that there is a funeral that has had its own situation of the former 6th president. And I don't even want to go there personally, but the point I'm making, we need to get back to that country that is loved by many people, admired for that matter, than what we have seen going on. And we all have a responsibility. It is not for government alone. It's not for other individuals. It's not for political parties. It's every Zambian have to fight for the Zambia we love. And that is why even the constitutional amendment has to reflect that very fact. And part of it also, when you saw that this death happened, it really took away some of the conversation that we should have continued having around the constitution. So it's only right that the president, through his wisdom and leadership, saw it fit that this this bill be deferred. Again, already, others are already saying it is withdrawn. No. According to the standing orders of Parliament.
Before we go to that, Honourable Minister,
yes,
in fact, it's good that you preempted that, because others are of the considered view that let's completely abandon this. In fact, even the Constitutional Court guided you, Honourable Minister, that this, if you went on with this process, it lacks legitimacy. You need wider consultation, and you need to appoint independent experts to be able to oversee, this process. Are you getting the guidance of the Constitutional Court?
Absolutely. I think the very day that the guidance came out, or the pronouncement, I was having a press briefing,
yes,
and SG Solicitor General Marshal Mujende has just come from court and briefed me right there as we were going on the site. I said, that is good. We have no problem. Again, this is something that sometimes credit is not given much to this president. He has categorically over and over explained that he wants to respect the separation of powers. So what you see at play is a president, a government, which is the UPND government, respecting the different arms of government. There is parliament there, and what does the law requires, or what does standing orders require, pardon me, is that once you are to defer a bill, after the president has guided, we have to write a letter as justice, which we did. Okay, we didn't haste because we appreciated the wisdom and the counsel from the head of the state, but mostly it came because of the wisdom around the executive, and the president has to make that call. And we took that counsel, and you know what? Parliament, because the bill had not shown itself on the order paper, then the speaker had to speak. Now, if the bill had been on the order paper for some reason, and that guidance is given, then I should have asked for leave, meaning should ask to the House and the public, of course, that this bill be deferred. So clearly what you see at play is nothing but purely respecting the different separation of powers. I tell to people at large, the president himself, I said, look, we are striving towards the same constituency, which is what? The Zambian people. Even some of the people that have spoken high names, appreciating President Hakainde Hichilema, the former Attorney General Musa Mwenya, and then you have others who are also saying, let's just completely withdraw it. I think when you go in that direction, then where are you leaving the dialogue? That is the question. So I think for me, I appreciate even the counsel or the guidance from the courts, because from the Constitutional Court, because it is only after dialoguing, it's only after that independent body goes around, they will come back and say, you know what, these are our findings. And they will present them, I'm sure, to the executive. It is there then the executive can say, we continue or withdraw.
Help the country understand. There's this guidance, this judgment from the Constitutional Court that has given guidance on how you must move. Will it undo everything that you've done? Because if the ones that are going to move across the country to ask what people must submit in terms of the amendments, then obviously these ones that the executive proposed perhaps could have been scrapped off. Is that the interpretation?
I wouldn't have those details. What I have really said in my own humble view is that the guidance has been taken, and that is in the spirit of appreciating everyone's role, really. And it is from the conversations, as well as once this independent body of experts is put together, that they will come up to what will be the what is the word I'm looking for? What are the perimeters, or what are they using as they go out? I think it is there, because if I said how they are going to do it, then again, then I would have known what they are thinking. But that is not the spirit.
My question was, once this technical team is set up, technical team of experts is set up, are they going with their wisdom to consult the people on what they want changed in the Constitution, or perhaps they're going with your proposals, Minister, to the people and asking them what their submissions are? I want to find out the people what they want to find out.
That's what I'm saying. It would be premature of me to know exactly how they're going to go about it. Remember, part of the arguments that we were making when we came with these provisions, we were saying, though they may not be all there, or they may not be quite exact, it is out of some of the recommendation from what? The constitutional reviews that have happened over the years. And we can go on mentioning them. So that is where we were coming from. We're not coming from an empty place. Even the delimitation. Just here, I've got this delimitation report, which was done in 2019 and came out in what? In 2020. So I believe that the ECZ, when they are coming to us, which is Electoral Commission of Zambia, they are not coming from without. They would have already had some information, because that delimitation report was never tabled or was never actualized. Well, it was tabled, but it was never actualized. Why would you start from the ground or from scratch? That's up to you. So I think there's a lot of wisdom that is already on the table.
And don't you think it's unfair, especially with when you came to Parliament, Honourable Minister, and you gave us a breakdown of the various constitutional review processes that have collected views from people. Some of these happened over 20 years ago. For example, the Shona Constitutional Review Commission that you presented in the House happened in 1973. The Mvunga Constitutional Review Commission happened in 1991. The Bonakatwe Review Commission happened in 1996. The Mungomba Constitutional Commission Review happened in 2005, and I could go on with all the number of.
And there were recent ones, including the Butane itself,
and the Butane
including the NCC. Yes.
Yes. Don't you think it's unfair?
ERTC.
Don't you think it's unfair, Honourable Minister, if you're going to if you're going to base your submissions off the submissions of the Zambians that lived in the 1970s submitted, when the needs of the current are different, Honourable Minister? Don't you think then the idea of you consulting the people then becomes very important, because the needs of 1973 perhaps are not the needs of 2025?
Some needs change, some don't. Some just become, maybe they become different in a way. They look, but they're the same. The issues of women, for example. It is in this country that you still have a lower number of women representation in Parliament. It's not just in Parliament. 15%. You are among the lowest in the region. I stand to be corrected. If not compared to Botswana and, is it Congo? I stand to be corrected. And we are a country that has prided itself to say we have had all these elections pass and our democracy has developed in a much faster way. But there are things that we have not yet done, which is one of them proportional representation or some kind of affirmative action for women. The issue of youth, no one can dispute that your youths today in Zambia are higher. Whether they're male or female, we have a young population. So there are these issues which, for the longest time, we have not worked on them. And we did not just talk about the Chona, the Mvunga. We went as far as the more recent one, including the ERTC. That was just put together last year. So it is a combination. Then to add to that, the president also reminded us, in a lot of the feedbacks he was getting, one of the issues is the by-election. Now, look what has happened in Lumezi, for example. If these proposed articles had gone through, I'm giving an example. Yeah. As it sits, the party that holds that seat would have found a way to bring another candidate. Munir was PF, correct?
He's independent.
Oh, he is independent. Okay, there then a by-election happened. I don't know why I always put him to the PF. But let's say he was PF. Okay, that seat who automatically be filled by a PF. Now, that conversation has been more recent, more on people saying we have become an electioneer country and we are losing a lot of resources around by-elections. So for me, those are more recent clauses, more recent issues that people have really voiced out. And again, some people have said, we like the idea, we like the principle of curing the by-election, but maybe it's how you're going about it, where you're giving more power to a political party. So how do we get around that? Those are health conversations to have. And that's just one example I've given.
Before I come to some of the contents of this bill, there was a scrimmage headline in the Mass newspaper for today, Sunday. It read, Kasune, Kabesha must go. They failed to advise President Hichilema And this one is Mukandila, Celestine Mukandila, the one that dragged you to court over this process. He's demanding...
He's the youth chair for the Tonse Alliance.
As well as a lawyer. Yeah. He's saying that you must be fired because you failed to advise the president together with the Attorney General. What's your reaction to him?
So, you know, one of the things I learned when I became a minister, that I can't go 50 kilometers away from Lusaka without the permission of the president.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people don't know that. You wonder why a lot of ministers have had time to balance being in the constituency and doing government work, the work of the Republic. So nothing that is done in any ministry without the understanding and the support of the executive. You cannot go anywhere without the permission of the executive. And who is the head of the executive? It's the president. I already told you that away from the 30 civil society that the president met with, away from the church mother bodies, away from the church itself, he has been having these different conversations. Maybe the letter didn't put everyone there, but we saw, even you as media houses, which I have to appreciate actually, became more involved as we went, you know, even covering people like the unions. I think it was the Federation of Workers Union, and then there was the one for the workers themselves who were saying, these are the issues we may want to see, but go on with this process. So clearly, you cannot call us out. But again, he's the president. He can still say, I'm disappointing you. When we take these positions, we are appointed to be disappointed. Now, the issue of not advising, ultimately, at the end of the day, the executive make the decision. And I remember also, I don't usually go on social media just because I find some information being very negative. One time I went... I can't remember the name of the lady who was saying, Kasune, I don't want to use the language they were using. You are young. Why are you pushing such a bill? You should leave old people. I'm like, is it Kasune as an individual? Do you realize that even within the articles, I have my favorites? And some things I don't even say, well, maybe not. But because of the office I'm holding, I have to be that first. I have to represent. When you're in government, you make a collective decision. Even if you had said no to one thing, Andrew, you cannot go out there and say, no, they've just made a decision. Bapanga veka or bapanga veka. No, it comes with the territory. And remember, when you are being sworn in, you pay allegiance to who?
To the president.
Yeah, and the country. Yes, and the Constitution of Zambia, of course. So all these are things that you have to do.
If it were entirely up to you, your conscience would not allow you to amend this Constitution at this time.
Why not? I have been one of the people who has advocated for women participation. Just for that clause, I would support the amendment. But again, that is why I'm excited, I personally, that out of this independent body of experts, out of the more conversation that we are going to have as a country, my prayer, my hope, it will be so objective. It's looking at this clause and many other things that may come. And that's why I say I'm not in a position to speak to that, because we as justice, we have a responsibility to hear what they will bring.
Do you agree that this decision by the court vindicates the opposition political parties that have been saying that this process lacks wider consultation? Do you think the voice of the courts vindicate them?
I think in a democratic dispensation, you have to respect the different views. And again, like I have said, you have a president in this state house who is a listening president. You rarely hear him talk anyhow, but when he talks, it's because he has heard so much. Now, some of us may be quick to talk, and you know what? Sometimes it's because of our positions. We have to talk more. But he is one leader who takes a lot in. So by the time he speaks, at least, and again, I'm speaking as an interested party who respect him so much as a president and his leadership style, he speaks to the issues that some of us maybe could have said a long time ago and maybe made more mistakes. But I think as you get to be a leader and being a president, I can see how that office would force you to become more
Explain
quieter.
to the people tonight, Honourable Minister, what is the legal implication of the president deferring the bill? What happens from here?
Okay, so I came prepared today. So that is the National Assembly of Zambia Standing Orders of 2024. I think we used to have the one in 2021. These are for 2024. When you look at 121.1, it speaks to how you can defer a bill. And like I've said, if it had already been on the paper on that day, I should have also come to ask the House. But because it wasn't on paper, the Speaker had to do the announcement. That gives this bill now 6 months. It is within that 6 months that if you don't communicate back to Parliament, it is considered withdrawn. So you can even go court tack and you don't say anything. But also you can say, look, we are withdrawing the bill. Or you come back and say, now we are ready to continue with the bill. So that is how the process of the bill, which is deferred, happens. So we look forward, really, to the many conversations that will happen, the consultations that will happen, the feedback. And I'm excited for the independent body experts so that they can go and interrogate some of these issues, but also maybe addition. I don't know. It will be up to them. I think what is important is their own independence and their own autonomous, and really do a good job for the Zambians. We're all crying for the same thing.
Who institutes this body? Is it the Ministry of Justice? Is it government? Who institutes this body?
Yeah, that one I have to find out. I'm sure there is precedence on how it has been done in the past, whether it is part of the executive, because one of the things we have to accept in this country, we are a presidential system. Okay? Until you find it fit to say, let's change, because sometimes we want, the president cannot do this. Well, but your system speaks that the president shall appoint. In other countries, that's not the case. So we have to interrogate the system that we are using. And by the way, let me take this opportunity also to inform the Zambian people that when the people from SADC came, to do a capacity building for the members, it clearly shows you that the system that we have, the first past the post, which means the winner takes it all, is actually more not favorable to actually having other groups come in. But it's a system we inherited. It's under Westminster. It is one of the most difficult systems to have other groups represented. That's why when you see in the bill which has been deferred, there was that introduction of a mixed electoral system. Because in itself, the first past the post is one of the systems which is simple, but it's very, very not good in terms of having more people, like people with disabilities, people who are women, for example. So you find that the countries that have proportional representation in their system have done better when it comes to the minority groups.
So now that there's this deferment by the president, we don't expect you to move across the country until the president gives guidance. What then happens also between now and the time that this 6 months window that is given to a deferred bill? What happens? Do we continue talking about this bill? What really gets to happen?
So again, Minister of Justice does a lot of things. A lot of contracts you see come out. They come out of Minister of Justice. A lot of bills for other ministries, they come out of Minister of Justice. And like I said, already in our budget, we already had line for other reforms. So the work continues. By the way, before I had started going around, and it was out of the meeting, like I said, in Kitwe, where we said, wait a minute, I was supposed to be actually going around looking at the Attorney General's chambers. For the first time in this country, we are really, as Minister of Justice, taking the issue of devolution seriously. And so you see that a lot of these provinces, and we look forward to one day when we can have the Attorney General chambers even in the districts. So that is an issue that was really on my table, and there are a lot of issues that are through Minister of Justice.
The reason I asked that question, Minister, is because the courts have given a guidance, and their guidance is that there should be this team that must be set up, and they're the ones that must, must consult, the people. So then, and there's a guidance also from the president that this bill must be deferred. And so the first time that this bills have been deferred under your administration, even the cybersecurity at some point was deferred, so as so many other bills that you have.
You're saying it's not the first time?
It's not the first time.
Okay. It's just because this is a national,
yes.
more of the supreme law.
Well, because, we're amending the constitution that needs,
And I'm glad you know that, because people think this is the only time a bill has been deferred.
So my question is, then what happens between now and the 6 months? Having in mind that there's a guidance from the court that an independent body must be set up, but also there's you from the Ministry of Justice that has been going around, getting feedback from the people. Do you stop with immediate effect whatever you're doing?
We're already done.
In regards to, you already done?
We were done, like I mentioned to you. The last province was Copperbelt.
So would you say that this was a sheer waste of money? Because
no, not at all. Like I've told you.
Did you exhaust the budget?
Well, I don't know. I'm not in the details of the budget as a minister. But like I said to you, there were already plans that we will look at other reforms in the ministry. That's one. Secondly, one of the issues that I was supposed to do, at least my office, was to really go around and sensitize people around the Attorney General's office. So when you see a lot of these meetings that we had, we queued literally, I would say maybe three stones. We used the constitutional amendment, trying to talk about the provisions that were there. Then we also brought people to speed in terms of where the Attorney General's office were. Actually, before the constitutional amendment, I'd already started on the Attorney General's chambers in the provinces as well. So I had done one, and I was about to do the second one. So when this conversation came in, it was just an addition, although it took the lion's share. So really, we continue. There's so much work in the Ministry of Justice. And if you see that I had come in the office in June, there was so much work being done then. You don't just sit because there's no constitutional amendment. And like we have said, I don't want to preempt what is going to be discussed.
Is the new Dawn still committed to changing the constitution before the next election?
Again, we have to hear from the conversations that will come out, as well as the independent body that.
Do you think that would be right to amend the constitution right before an election, Honourable Minister?
Okay, that has been cleared, that all these other, not all of them, but most of the constitutional amendments have been done in election year. But for me, I think I don't want to preempt, because then it will be like, why are you bringing these people if you already have the answer? I want to give them a benefit of a doubt. We'll have to go on and, of course, kind of maybe a gray page, because there is information that we already know. There is information that we also gathered. There is information that came through the time of Gazette, because that is the purpose of gazetting. Let's not forget that. There is information that came from the ERTC Technical Committee, and many other information that even came from you, the media. That's why I have to say, I have to give credit to the media houses, not just here in Lusaka, especially where you were able to talk to to speak in local languages. Radio Mano, for example, Waitwika in, is it Muchinga? Then you have, is it Breeze in Eastern Province? I mean, then just recently, that was the second last province in Western Province. We were on Radio Liseli, and you could tell that the listenership was just really glued in. We went for 2 hours almost. The same happened on the Copperbelt on ER Radio. So again, like we all know, the people can only be informed away from the government as the executive. The media has to play a critical role.
You had mentioned at the time that these proposals were coming in that they'll bring about a lot of good things to our country. What is the implication of a minister if we don't amend our constitution before the 2026 elections? Are we going to see a lot of bad things happen?
I don't know about bad, but there are many good clauses. For example, the gap between when a next government is coming in, there is the gap that the vacancy of the Attorney General and the Solicitor General. Now, as we all have come to know, they are the advisors to the government, and secondly, there are also contracts that they do. So one of the amendments there was that let them run the whole time. When the new person comes in, or whatever government comes back again, then they can choose either to keep them or not to keep them. So if that didn't happen, I could see that gap continuing. Secondly, where really my biggest heart goes is the issue of delimitation. I don't want to just give my own constituency as an example. There are a lot of constituencies out there, Andrew, and to the Zambian people that are so large, such that even when President Hakainde Hichilema, to his credit under the New Dawn government, went from CDF from 1.6 million only under the PF to 36.1 million kwacha now, you still don't have the desk for every child in the biggest constituencies. And most of them are rural. So some of the needs, and maybe that's where the excitement also was very much, was on delimitation. For a lot of people in the constituents, in the rural areas, the chiefs in particular, So again, in the urban area, you don't have that problem. I don't know. Maybe there is a school where children sit on the ground in towns, but on the floor. But I would say it's likely to be found in rural constituencies. So the issue of delimitation was a big one. Again, for me, as an activist and someone who has worked in the NGO sector, advocated for the representation of women, I would love to see that particular proportion representation come back. Maybe we can argue on how it's going to be done. For example, the issues of youths. We need to really harness the demographic dividends in this country, and these are our youths, and of course people
what
with
would be your
disabilities.
response to the majority of the civil society organizations and the opposing political parties, Honourable Minister, that say that the majority of these proposals, the content of this bill, covers elections. They border on elections, and perhaps that was where the worry was, that what is the rush? You are tackling issues that border on elections are not issues that matter to the Zambian people, but issues that matter to you, the politicians. What is your reaction to the people that had this concern that the majority of these proposals touch on elections?
So when you look at it's almost at the end, it's part of the who is a child, for example, because I think we don't talk much about it. How is that got to do with the elections? One of the challenges we have, which I added actually as we were going around, was the cry that the Zambian people have been crying to say, enough of the defilement, enough of the rape cases, enough of sodomy, enough of incidents. These are big issues where Zambians have walked around and said, we want this to be non-bailable. Well, guess what? Some of the challenges were around this inconsistency when it comes to age. And SADC Parliamentary Forum has really helped through the model laws to say what is the age that we could consider one as an adult. Of course, if you are raped, even if you're an adult, it's still a rape, okay? If you're sodomized, it's still sodomy. And I think mostly we talk about girls, but there are a lot of men who have been abused as well, especially boys, I should say. And we need to speak to this. So these are some of the articles that would help us, even in looking at how do we minimize the issues of early child marriage. How do we minimize some of these inconsistencies when it comes to customary law versus the other law, which is statutory law? So that is one. Secondly, again, the issue of delimitation is very personal for me, because I know, not just in my own constituency, what about in Kasempa, what about in Kapirimposhi, what about in I think in Lavushimand and others, So those are issues that I think would be really a missed opportunity if that did not happen. The other issue is the issue around the mayors also. I mean, where did it come from that we would all not have a cap, apart from the president, okay? Understand and understood that only mayors and council chairperson have a cap on their term. Now, who did the benchmarking around that? I don't know, but that was one of the requests that the council chairperson
so they're not
also
wrong. All these are elections related. Revision of the qualification of the office of the...
how is delimitation election related when it will help people have more access to resources which they do not have? You may not feel the pain because you're in the capital city and they're not having equal representation, because one member of parliament is representing 200,000 people versus a member of parliament who's representing 50,000 people. Or maybe 100,000 people, but in a city like Lusaka, where there are roads, where there are businesses, who can sponsor them? So I think some of it is a matter of where you're coming from. And that's why they say, even a book, you have to interrogate who wrote the book.
But maybe to run through them, remove the term limit for the office of the mayor.
which we have just discussed. Like why?
An election.
For them.
Borders on election. Vacancy of the minister's office 90 days before elections.
What is wrong with that?
Borders on elections.
What is wrong with that?
Harmonization of the term of office for members of parliament. Borders on elections.
Okay. So you want ministers to stay or to repeat what happened when we saw ministers being told to say you have to pay? I mean, at the end of the day, Andrew, and to my colleagues and my fellow Zambians, we have to realize that government is about governance, and where you're going to find a lot of governance issues, it is in your constitution. And we also have to accept, yes, you don't want your supreme law always to be amended or appealed, whatever the term is, but you also don't want to be scared to amend if you see that the challenge, you just said it. Kasune, what are you saying? Are you saying that all these other commissions which are a cake, the Chona, which I was not born, most likely you are not born, 3 years later I come in. Why are we looking at them? But other issues are more current. Why? Because a constitution has to reflect the needs of the people or cure the ambiguities that are there. So I think also we have to come from that background to say, we can amend the constitution to fit our current needs or to cure the problems that we find. And I think for me, which was, by the way, the Article 79 was left by this very independent body of experts, and to their credit, to their wisdom, they left it there that if Parliament saw it fit to amend the Constitution, they must. So we don't need to throw the baby with its water. If there is something good that came out in 2016, it has to remain there for the many generations to come. But if there are things that we can amend, and it's not the end of it in itself, we have countries where they keep amending, but we have also countries where they don't keep amending. So it is us, to the Zambian people and the generations to come, to say, does this reflect the needs of our people? Because the laws are to represent the needs of the people, not vice versa. And that is what amendment of the Constitution is all about.
Wallace relied on Article 79. The court relied on so many articles, because you only had one article to prove that this was the right process, but the court had more than 7 articles. Article 1, Article 2, Article 4, Article 9, Article 92, all those articles that the court relied on for you to have a legitimate process.
Through the democratic dispensation.
Do you feel let down by the Attorney General that he couldn't make a case for government?
First of all, I think what you see at play is a government that has allowed freedom. And I'll use this even for the freedom of the media. For the longest time, just in between, there was so many accusations around freedom of expression and opinion. Now, tell me, I could be wrong, Andrew, which media station, has closed since the UPND came into power? I could be wrong. But what you see out there, especially on social media, and some of the accusations, is that we have suppressed the media. How is it when we have allowed the media houses to go on? It's the same thing. You cannot have it all. One of the beauty of a democracy, and if there is one thing I appreciate personally, is to have a strong opposition. Because the lack of a strong opposition, you create a monster in your own governance. Every leader, even our own individual lives.
Your government has been accused of killing an independent opposition.
How will we kill an independent opposition? They said things which you wouldn't have said when we were in...
They're accusing your government of killing the PF.
How?
That you put in your own stages in the Patriotic Front to install the leader for the PF that came from you.
It is the Zambian people who killed PF. You know that. You have more better maybe findings on what they got on election day. And that is power to the people. And that is what we need to respect. But we still need a strong opposition. It doesn't have to be PF, because I think PF has gone. It is dead. But we need a strong opposition to hold the government, to give checks and balances. That is part of the democracy that we chose. And it is also important that the executive respect the different arms, or should I say, different arms of government.
Do you think that there's a strong opposition that is giving you credible checks and balances today?
I think right now they're an alliance. I hear them, but I have to say that I don't see a strong opposition right now. But it is important that we have a strong opposition because it keeps us on our toes for the sake of the Zambian people. Because you know what? Every leader, even you in your own home or even among your friends, you should have those friends who can call a spade for you. Okay, you may not like it, but when you go home, you would say, I appreciate those friends. But if you are the wisest among your friends, you are the richest among your friends, you are this among your friends, then maybe you're in a wrong group.
I'd like for you to give your last remarks, Honourable Minister, to the people that believed so much in this Bill 7 and were looking forward that we get to fix the lacunas that are in the Constitution. The President got to mention that if we don't fix Article 52, for example, we're going to have, a country who's run by one person for so many years beyond the time that they are constitutionally mandated to run.
Absolutely. Resignation.
And the Electoral Commission gives us data of the fact that we're losing, from 21 up until now, we've lost in excess of 375 million kwacha, all because of by-elections, which we could potentially fix if we fix our Constitution. What are you telling the people that believed so much that they'll see the light of day in terms of these amendments coming to life?
I would say that first and foremost, thank you to the Zambian people, and indeed thank you to the three arms of government. This is as it should be in a democratic dispensation where we can agree to disagree. So for me, as the Minister of Justice, I just feel like I'm a steward for such a time as this. I'm not going to be the last Minister of Justice, neither am I the first. Of course, I'm the first female Minister of Justice. I think it really speaks to us maturing as a democracy, and we'll continue to grow together. So for those that wanted to see it like yesterday, I would say that it's not a lost hope, because this independent body of experts, these other conversations that we will have, the consultations, they will go in any direction. And those who had concerns, it is as it should be. Let's just be cordial, let's be respectful, let's be objective. And at the end of the day, that is what is important. I think we lose the conversation when we begin to attack the persons. But when we talk to each other in an objective manner, you can question me, it is the right thing to do, because we are here to save the Zambian people. And your president in particular is listening, and indeed the New Dawn government. We are in this together for the sake of our children and our grandchildren. By the way, I've got 2 grandchildren. People sometimes don't believe it, but we need to leave Zambia better than we found it, especially when it comes to our laws and, more importantly, the supreme law.
Minister of Justice, Honourable Princess Kasune, thank you so much for making the time to speak to the Zambians across the country over this very important document.
What a delight. We owe it to them. Thank you very much.
We're discussing the decision by the Constitutional Court to halt Bill 7, but also the decision by the President to advise the Minister of Justice, who was my guest, to defer the bill until wider consultation is done. On behalf of the entire production crew, thanks so much for watching. My name is Andrew Mwansa. Good night.